Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Sex Without Stress, a couple's guide to overcoming disappointment, avoidance, and pressure, by Jessa Zimmerman, M.A., LMHC, CST, narrated by Suzie Althens. Chapter 1. Help is Here. An Introduction. The most effective and powerful way to develop as a person and to change your relationship is to make the changes required to transform your sex life. That is why, from the beginning, I focused my therapy practice almost exclusively on working with couples and their sexual issues. Subsequently, I've assisted hundreds of couples in their work to reconnect intimately, emotionally, and sexually. I have been granted access to the inner workings of relationships and sex in a way few people ever experience. Over years of dedication to this field, I have developed ways to think about sex, and what's important about it, that create permission, freedom, and lightness in a relationship, instead of heaviness and pressure. My practical exercises help people learn how to bring these ideas to fruition and apply them in their sexual lives. This is what I will share with you here. Are you avoiding your sex life? I want to help. If you've picked up this book, I imagine that you are unhappy about the state of your sex life. Perhaps in your relationship, sex is not working well. You love your partner, and you know sex matters, but sex has become a source of hurt, doubt, and confusion. I also imagine you're anxious about confronting the topic of sex with your partner. You have no idea what you'll find or where the conversation will go. It's scary when you feel like sex isn't working. It often causes you to doubt yourself, your partner, and your relationship. Frequently, it's the thing keeping you awake with worry at 4 a.m. The human tendency is to avoid whatever scares us. So I imagine you and/or your partner are avoiding sex at this point. You're not happy, your partner's not happy. You can't talk about it productively, and the problems are palpable between you. This is the proverbial elephant in the room, and it is crowding out the positive parts of your relationship. There is a way forward. You and your partner can get to a place where you'll enjoy your sex life. If you both want an intimate connection, then you can absolutely create it. That's probably another reason you've picked up this book. You know, you want to be more than just roommates. You no longer want to feel lonely in bed with your partner, with that invisible, impenetrable wall between you. You don't want to repeat the awkward dance around having sex, or not having sex. You don't want to keep putting on the charade and continuing living in a world where you don't enjoy your sex life. You don't know how to make it better, but you do know something needs to change. You still have at least a slight sliver of hope that there is something you can do that will make a difference. So, you find yourself here, with this book. I want to help you do exactly that. Get on a path where you and your partner can feel good about the state of your sex life, instead of feeling sadness, shame, frustration, confusion, doubt, and dread. Since you are listening to this, you have already shown you are willing to do something with that sliver of hope. You have hope in the possibility that things can improve. Embrace that hope. Believe that things can be good. Know that by adjusting your expectations, you will feel lighter. Sex can feel easy and even playful. From where you are now, and this is vital to success, you must be willing to have the type of honest and open conversations that are the hardest part of this process. These conversations with your partner and conversations with yourself are a soul-searching reckoning about what's happening between you and your role in the dilemma. Can you commit to that? You've got to go on faith, at least at the beginning, by not knowing if your relationship can bear the weight of the process. But I promise you, things won't get better on their own. What do you have to lose? Who is this for? I have written this book to help great couples just like you, who wish their sex lives were great too. What makes you a great couple? When at least some of these apply. You are still friends, even best friends. You manage something well together. You co-parent successfully. You manage your money. Or you are cooperative partners in the home. You can still have fun together. You have a great relationship, separate from sex. You can talk about most things. You share a basic kindness and decency with each other. This is not to say the two of you never quarrel, or that there aren't some problems in your relationship. But to get the most out of this book, you will need to have a solid foundation. If you have goodwill, love, and respect, but don't know what to do to address your sex life, this book can help. If this doesn't sound like your relationship, though, it may not be time to use this book. John Gottman, a famous researcher of marital stability, writes about what he calls the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse: defensiveness, stonewalling, contempt, and criticism. These behaviors are good indications of bigger issues in your relationship that will need to be addressed before you can work as a team to tackle your sexual issues. Find a good therapist and get some help, so you can be honest about your issues and learn how to interact as allies. If you do not feel good about the person you are or the person you're with, it's going to be difficult to change your situation, because to transform your sex life, it's more effective if you work together. What do I know? My journey to become a sex therapist grew out of my own struggles in a marriage that went terribly wrong. Things were great at first, as they are for a lot of people. Sex was easy and important to both of us. We shared interests, we had plenty of time together, and we really didn't have any stressors in our early life together to create emotional challenges. It was, of course, the honeymoon period, when everything seemed simple. I'm sure neither of us imagined it would all come crashing down in the future. Who gets married, at least the first time, with any sense of how hard it is? Once we had kids, there was stress on the relationship. That's when our differences, our inability to work together, and our struggle to collaborate were revealed. Those qualities had never really been tested before, and our relationship didn't do so well on that test when our children arrived. This, combined with the persistent pain I experienced during sex for months after the birth of our daughter, was a perfect storm. Since neither of us knew how to talk about what was happening, it went downhill from there. In general, I tried to pretend everything was okay, but I couldn't stop the thoughts from flooding my mind in the early morning hours. I continued to experience a terrible dread that my relationship was in a bad place and might not be savable. I felt embarrassed to be failing so badly. I grew up in a sex-positive household. My family was open about the topic of sex, and sex was discussed as something normal, positive, and healthy. It was clear my parents shared a happy, intimate life. They were happily married for 52 years, until my mother died. Yet even with knowledge about sex and the model of my parents' strong, lifelong, intimate relationship, I was completely ill-equipped to manage sex, intimacy, and cooperation with my husband. With each passing year, and with the addition of 2 more children into our lives, the tension in our relationship grew to the point where it was palpable. Sometimes we'd explode in a fight, but neither of us handled that well either. I would pretend to be asleep when he came to bed. I was exhausted, anxious, and unable to handle what was happening. I didn't understand exactly why I didn't want sex, and I was overwhelmed by the complexity of our relationship problems. I knew he was hurting in our relationship too, and I felt guilty. Yet I did nothing. I was afraid we couldn't fix it. I was ashamed. I felt like I was failing, and I didn't know where to start. The marriage that had seemed so easy and joyous at the beginning, with the man I had chosen to have and to hold and raise children with, ended because we didn't confront our problems and didn't get therapy until it was too late to prevent our divorce. The end of my marriage brought the necessity and opportunity to forge a new career. Although it seemed daunting to undertake graduate school, build a private therapy practice, and transition to life as a single mom of 3, I knew enough to follow my heart. I was always the person that other people found safe to talk to, and I was passionate about helping people. Deciding to become a therapist, I knew from the beginning that I wanted to focus on working with couples. I wanted to understand what makes relationships work and keep others from enduring the same fate of my marriage. I wanted to unlock the secrets of successful marriage that I couldn't learn just from watching my own parents. My master's program was incredible because it focused on personal growth and interpersonal experiences with the other members of my cohort. It was designed to challenge us as people and to create opportunities to change how we interacted with others to have more open and honest relationships. It showed me my challenges with intimacy and taught me how to achieve success in relationships, both intimate and otherwise. I met my current partner during that time, and we applied what I was being taught about openness, honesty, confrontation, and boundaries. I was able to take the concepts I was learning about healthy relationships and put them into practice. My partner and I have built our relationship strong from the beginning. While I still have my own messes, I do know a lot about how to keep the relationship healthy. I no longer avoid issues. I speak up when something needs to be addressed. I hold myself accountable, and I also challenge my partner to do the same. I work to be honest about my thoughts and feelings, even when it isn't to my advantage. I advocate for my needs, yet I strive to remain flexible and giving to ensure that I can meet my partner's needs. I'm willing to stretch beyond my comfort zone. I care for my emotional state and my reactivity when things are difficult so that I can stay grounded and respond honestly and constructively. I don't say these things to brag. I share this to illustrate the kind of changes you can make. These are the kinds of skills I want to help you develop through the process described in this book. These also happen to be the skills that allow you to transform your sex life. Early in my training, an instructor gave a seminar about her work as a sex therapist. She described how most of her cases involved grief and loss work. This notion of grief and loss, entangled with a problematic sex life, hit me square in the gut. Instantly, I could relate to how people suffer when they struggle with sex. I know how vital our intimate connections are. It is a loss when they aren't working. We grieve. It feels extraordinarily painful. We feel hopeless and alone. I knew in that moment, sitting in the seminar, I was going to be a sex therapist. I decided soon after to undertake the extensive training to become nationally certified through the American Association of Sexuality Educators, Counselors, and Therapists. What will you learn? You are going to learn about how people get stuck exactly where you are and why it's such a common problem. You're going to learn how to think about sex and what kinds of expectations set you up for success. You will begin to understand what kind of baggage you bring to your relationship and its impact on your sex life. You will also see what your role is in the problems and what you need to do to change your part. You're going to learn to transform your sex life. In fact, working on the sex problem is going to positively affect the rest of your relationship. When you master what it takes to improve your sex life, you're set up for success in the other areas of your partnership as well. This book follows the same structure and path that I take with my therapy clients. Create understanding. Understand how disappointment, avoidance, and pressure become a cycle. Uncover and adjust your unrealistic expectations. Change your beliefs about how sex and relationships work. Figure out what's going on and what's your part. Learn to talk with your partner about your issues. Unpack your baggage. Discover what kinds of issues are complicating your sex life. Deconstruct your unique dynamic around having and not having sex. Create your individual action plan about what you need to change. Take action to change your sex life. Learn the exercise that you'll use to create change. Put insight into action with my 9-phase plan. Resources now and in the future. At the moment, you are stuck in a negative cycle, feeling things like disappointment, sadness, fear, frustration, and loneliness. But there truly is a way to escape that cycle to create a sex life that feels easy, joyful, pleasurable, and even playful. It's probably hard to imagine sex being anything but serious and stressful, if you can imagine having sex at all. But you can work with your partner to completely transform how you interact in and around sex. No matter how stuck you feel, there is a way to move forward. I want this book to help you change your sex life, connect with your partner, and look forward to intimacy rather than avoid or dread it. The first step in the process is to sort through this mess you are in now, understanding the avoidance cycle and how it works. A few disclaimers. I have created several example couples based on the stories and experiences from clients over the years. These couples are composites of the situations, details, and feelings that are common when people are dealing with sexual issues. You may feel like I am describing you specifically, but that's because I found that the issues, themes, and even statements people make are common among couples struggling with sex. You will get to follow their journey throughout the book as they go from feeling stuck and hopeless to finding joy and ease in their sex lives. I make every effort to use inclusive language throughout this book. I affirm every sexual orientation, gender identity, relationship structure, and consensual sexual behavior, and I hope that is clear in my writing. This book is for couples, all couples, and it is meant to address sexual avoidance between any two people. I do not assume you are monogamous, straight, able-bodied, identified with your assigned gender, or any other particular trait. If you find any instance of less inclusive language or assumption, it is unintentional, and I apologize. My intent is to include everyone. Section 1. Set the stage for success. Chapter 2. The Sexual Avoidance Cycle. Despite the common belief that sex is supposed to be fun, easy, and natural, a surprising number of people struggle with it. If you are having problems in your sex life, you are not alone. In my practice, I have seen young couples who haven't consummated their marriage, who struggle with sexual pain, or who argue about their different levels of sexual interest. I've seen middle-aged people who are dealing with stress and responsibilities overtaking their relationship, who have lost interest in sex, or who have gotten complacent and bored in their sex life. There are older couples who struggle with sexual dysfunction, are feeling the effects of disease and its treatment, or are just now beginning to talk about what they want out of their sex life. This isn't a complete list, of course. This is just a sample of the kinds of sexual concerns experienced by so many people. People like you. People like me. And people who don't realize that problems with sex are commonplace. Struggles in your sex life can make you sad and anxious, especially if they happen often. If you aren't having sex, or at least not as much as you want, you may feel inadequate as well as disappointed. If sex doesn't seem to go well when you do have it, the result leads to feelings of disappointment, or worse, failure. And because it is human nature to avoid difficult and anxiety-provoking feelings, you may find yourself avoiding sex altogether, having it, talking about it, and doing anything to change it. In general, once you start to avoid something, your anxiety about it gets worse. It becomes harder and harder to approach whatever it is that you're avoiding. You start to feel pressure building up and bearing down on you. This compounding pressure only adds to the anxiety, creating a downward spiral of deeper and more ingrained sexual issues. Feelings of disappointment, failure, and inadequacy lead to avoidance. Avoidance creates increased anxiety and pressure. Heightened pressure just makes it harder to have a fulfilling sexual encounter. creating more feelings of disappointment, failure, and inadequacy. Disappointment, avoidance, pressure. This is the avoidance cycle, and it is a vicious one. So it's important to discuss each of these experiences separately. Sex feels disappointing. Feelings of disappointment are the most common cause of the avoidance cycle. They kick off the whole process. Different couples will tolerate sexual struggles to different degrees, but it's common to start avoiding sex when bad feelings about it occur more frequently. Sex can feel disappointing for many reasons. You may have unrealistic expectations, although you may not realize they're unrealistic, leaving you sad and afraid when reality isn't living up to your ideal. You may have the unfounded idea that sex should be spontaneous, that men should last a long time, that women should orgasm through penetrative sex, or that penetration is the only sex that counts. These are a few common errant expectations, and there are many more. Every time you have sex that falls short of your expectations, it can feel like a failure, diminishing your confidence for the next time. Sex can feel disappointing because of what is happening instead of what isn't. You may see things about yourself or your partner that dishearten you. No matter where the disappointment originates, it leads you to feel more sad and anxious. It reaches the point where every sexual encounter holds the weight of the world, because each time is a test you expect to fail. Eventually, the survival of your relationship seems to hang in the balance. It feels like you are risking everything each time you have sex, depending on what happens during and afterward. If sex isn't easy or natural, you may assume there is something wrong with you, your partner, or your relationship. You may worry that you're with the wrong person, or that you are broken. Worries consume your thoughts, and you begin to question everything. The worries don't go away during sex. In fact, the worries tend to be magnified during sex, leaving you unable to be present with your partner. Inevitably, you wonder if your relationship is doomed. When you're having sexual problems, it is common to worry about how your partner is feeling, both while having sex and in general. You may feel guilty about your sexual struggles because you want your partner to be happy. During sex, you spend time on your partner's side of the court, trying to read whether they are pleased and what they want. For the most part, you are not allowing yourself to think about or pursue what you want because sex feels fragile and fraught with tension. You are vigilant during sex instead of getting to enjoy it. Is this one of the times that will go pretty well and I get to feel relief? Can the two of us check off the box and feel like we're off the hook for a while before the pressure mounts again? The walls seem to close in. The space around sex gets smaller and tighter, constricting until it feels like there is no room to move or change. You begin avoiding sex. When sex seems to fail, when you feel disappointed afterward, when it ends in tears, sex begins to feel risky and negative. Sex is not the positive, enjoyable experience you hoped for, or that you may have shared with your partner in the past. Before you have any sexual problems, it's hard to imagine that having sex will ever seem negative or difficult. But now, sex has become an increasingly negative experience. The more disappointing sex is, the more you end up avoiding it. One of you is probably adept at missing the opportunities to have, or even talk about, sex. It's common to make yourself busy in the evening, or to fall asleep earlier than your partner. Perhaps you say, "I'm exhausted," at bedtime almost every night, to signal that sex is off the table. One or both of you may deflect any comments about sex or any bid to have sex. You may act like you're oblivious to the comments or actions, going on as if they never happened, or that they mean something else. Or you use humor to respond to a genuine attempt to deal with the subject, effectively telling your partner that you're not going to take it seriously. Perhaps you or your partner Take those attempts to address sex and steer toward a fight instead. You put the focus on your partner's level of sexual desire, high or low, or how sex is initiated, instead of addressing the fact that you're not having it. Or maybe you maneuver any mention of your sex life into a fight about a completely different topic, driving the conversation even further away from the subject of sex. These techniques enable you to avoid addressing what's happening, or not happening, in your sex life. Indeed, there may be real issues to fight about, concerns about your relationship that need to be dealt with, before you're going to want to have sex with your partner. Those topics will need to be addressed. However, if you stage these fights instead of having a conversation about sex, you are creating even more problems. These are diversion tactics, a way to avoid saying, "I know we're not having sex, and I have some good reasons that have to be addressed so that we can make progress on our sex life." The pressure mounts. Avoiding your sexual problems doesn't make them go away. You might experience a brief respite once the subject of sex seems to be off the table. But unless you and your partner are both content in a sexless, sex-limited, or sexually problematic relationship, you can't escape the knowledge that at least one of you is unhappy. Even if you manage to put it out of your mind for a while because your partner isn't bringing it up, sex is right back at center stage as soon as you have your next heart-to-heart, or fight, about it. Even if there are no outward signs that either of you is thinking about sex, you think about it. A lot. More and more as time goes by. The thoughts start to monopolize your mental energy. Avoidance creates pressure. Pressure comes from the belief that you should be having sex more often than you do. It comes from one person wanting sex while the other doesn't. It comes from the energy it takes to avoid the subject. Additionally, once your frequency of sex decreases due to avoidance, there is more and more pressure that the encounters you do have should go well. And when sex doesn't go well again and again, the whole cycle amplifies. This is when you wonder if things will ever get better. The pressure is becoming an ever-increasing presence in your relationship. You end up with that elephant in the room, suffocating any chance you have to enjoy sex together, to ever feel like it's successful. You are stuck in your head the whole time. You're certainly not connecting with your partner. This pressure can also manifest itself in other ways, like sexual dysfunction. It's not surprising that it's difficult to get aroused in such a state, much less reach an orgasm. Things are getting worse, and you are getting desperate, resigned, devastated. So, this is where you are. Your expectations aren't met. You feel disappointed. You start to avoid sex. Your sense of pressure increases. You have a harder time enjoying sex. And round you go. Once you're trapped in this cycle, it's hard to see any way out. Fear can keep you from moving forward. Anxiety and avoidance rob you of the chance to improve your partnership and your sex life. Don't let the cycle consume you any longer. Your paralysis in the face of fear is what feeds the cycle. You're caught in the vortex of swirling feelings of inadequacy, disappointment, failure, hopelessness, pressure, and anxiety. As long as you stand still in the middle of all that, you can't escape to the other side, where it's light, playful, relaxing, and free. Instead of avoiding the things that scare you, you need to confront these issues so you can move past them. There are ways to heal, transform, and adapt to the complexities of your sexual situation. This book is about giving you the framework and the tools to make your sex life better. Before I talk about how you're going to change your sex life, I need to take a teaching moment and give you some basic information that will set you up for success. The first thing I want you to understand is that your expectations are the root of the problem. Before you proceed, I want you to meet some people that illustrate some of the many ways couples get caught in the avoidance cycle. These are the couples that serve as examples throughout the book. You're going to check in with them as they...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?